Yemi Cardoso, the newly appointed Central Bank of Nigeria governor, outlined his key priorities. He emphasized evidence-based monetary policy, transparency in the foreign exchange market, and addressing unsettled obligations as part of what he will be bringing on board. Cardoso also pledged to collaborate with the fiscal side to control inflation and achieve ambitious GDP growth targets. His strategy includes data-driven decision-making and enhancing the country's petroleum resources. Cardoso's leadership aims to stabilize the exchange rate, ensure transparent regulations, and drive economic growth. And so this morning, joining me to talk about this is Muktar Mohammed, CEO, Asheer Dynamic Solutions. Thank you so much, Muktar, for talking to us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, Lekan.
Now, the newly confirmed CBN Governor, Yemi Cardoso, said so many things from the monetary policy issues, talking about the gross domestic products, foreign exchange challenges, inflation, and so on. Now, some have said that he has good understanding of the current situation of the country and the economy. So do you also share that same sentiment? Do you believe that he has the wherewithal to deliver his mandate as the new CBN Governor?
Every CBN governor that had been appointed or nominated and finally confirmed, we've never had the doubt about their ability based on their antecedents before they became CBN governor. So I don't think that is in questions, but we always have questions when they start the job, when they start coming out with their policies and or how they want to drive and their monetary policy. That's where we've always had problem with them. So to say whether Yemi Cardoso is not qualified, he is very, very qualified. He's a man that has been in the economic space for a while. He's been a man that has been in the monetary policy committee, monetary policy side in terms of analyzing monetary policy decisions from the CBN before now. So now that he's at the helm of affairs, we hope that he'll be able to implement some of those reports that he was actually giving out to most of us when he was in the private sector. Yemi Cardoso, yes, is the first CBN governor that we are not seeing coming out from being an MD of a bank or be the, playing right into the financial space. Well, though you could say he was chairman of Citibank, but again, you could also say he was the commissioner for economic planning in Lagos State at the point when Mr. President was also the governor of Lagos State. And so you could look at it as a man that had been able to hold the political side of events also when the governor was, when he was a commissioner and president was a governor. I think I don't have a doubt about his ability to perform, but we have to wait and see that we begin to get those policy that he's been saying or what he wants to do. We all know the immediate task that he has to do. Number one, stabilize the FX market. That is, for me, is the only one. If you ask me what the task for Yemi Cardoso, one, stabilize FX, two, stabilize FX, three, stabilize FX. That is what everybody wants to hear now. That's what everybody wants to see. How are you going to stabilize this FX volatility that we have been experiencing since this government came to power?
Okay, so that is one big question. And while it was being screened by the legislators, Cardoso said that the first thing the CBN would do was to clear the backlog of a foreign exchange, irrespective of the amounts. And you would recall that the immediate past acting CBN governor, Shonobi, on September 6, 2023, said the Apex Bank had concluded negotiations on dollar debts with commercial banks and that the backlogs of over $10 billion would be cleared within 2 weeks. Now, it's been more than 2 weeks now, and we've not seen that being done. So the question is, how would Cardoso do it?
Well, that shows they have the money. Because again, if you look at the CBN auditor report, by the time you clear up $10,000 and you have less than $20,000 in our foreign reserve, then if you go by the CBN auditor report based on debt and remove the debt and everything, then we are already on negative. So even the CBN have come to deny that the auditor report, some of the loans or what they say they were owing is not really the way they explain it. So fine. But again, I think it's a good step. I've said it before that the first thing to create stability in this market, to make sure that we see the exchange rate come down, is let the foreign investors have confidence in you, let them know that they can repatriate their money. So the first thing you have to do is to clear up those backlogs, especially from the airline companies. And so when you clear all those backlogs from the airline companies, then the airline companies will start issuing ticket to Nigeria when they pay in naira, because what we see now is that most airline companies don't collect naira, so most Nigerians have to sort for dollar to pay them. So they are charging dollar just because they want to repatriate the money back to their country. So that will bring down the pressure on the exchange rate, which I think is a good thing. They said they owe in the banks also, they will clear off that also with the banks. That will bring liquidity into the system. You see, the challenge I keep saying is that the parallel market seems not to do the kind of transaction that the official market does. But the only issue there is that most SMEs, most small investors that want 5, 10,000, that wants to import goods from this area to this area, from China to Nigeria, from Europe to Nigeria, look at the seamless quality. They don't want to go and fill a form M that they will have to stay for 3 months or 1 month when they could actually just go to the bureau de change and change. So we need to create that seamless policy. Either get the bank involved. I keep saying I don't know why the CBN have not been able to get bank involved so that we have a bank that have a bureau de change. I want to get dollar, I go there and I buy it at market determining rates, which is also the same thing as what you have at the fixed and import, export and import windows. So that for me should be the game changer if it's able to bring those stability, especially like you have said, pay off those debts. That will bring down the tension. That would drastically see the naira exchange stronger than the dollar, because as it stands now in the parallel market of 1,000 naira to the dollar, you know that definitely the naira is very undervalued in the parallel market. As it stands now, it's very undervalued.
Well, the central bank the new central bank governor came out to say that he's hoping to maintain price stability, revert evidence-based monetary policies, and also discontinue his predecessors' unorthodox monetary policies to bolster the country's naira currency. Well, to me, these familiar statements seem as something that we already know and we've been inundated with. Looking at what has happened with the past CBN governors, what should we expect in terms of changes to be made? Looking at the monetary policy statements, and how do you think it would ensure market stability? Because the insinuation of speculators is that the CBN does not really have control over the markets.
I think number one, they have to have control over the market because they're supposed to be the primary dealers in the market. I think again, I like what the CBN governor is saying. He said a lot of interventions will be suspended, which I think that has been a pipe for corruption. It's been a conduit pipe for corruption. So once you stop those interventions, then you find a lot of these intervention funds finding their way into the CBN, so they will have enough war chests to be able to do whatever they want to do. To create stability in the market is to increase supply, especially in the FX market. To create stability in the inflationary pressure that we've encountered, not just through monetary policy, but through price volatility, is to also create stability in the exchange market, because we are in an economy that is driven largely by importation. So definitely anything that will bring down the price of the exchange rate between the naira and the dollar is going to have a huge effect on our inflation, because that means the cost of some of these goods that are imported into this country will definitely go down. So I think he has his work cut out, but like I said, all I want to see is the stability in the exchange rate. Once he's able to achieve that, every other thing will fall in place. Trust me, every other thing will fall in place. As it stands now, he needs to do the needful. He needs to go in there. He needs to look the unorthodox way. Yes, we remember then President Buhari said that maybe the world should come and learn from us, that he support the unorthodox way that the CBN have been dealing with the market. Now, when you talk about dealing with the market or dealing with investors or dealing with their currency, and you are now bringing the normal way into it, then you must know you have the watches to be able to defend your currency. So for me, that is the greatest challenge that we are having, the challenge of supply. If you don't have that supply, no matter what you do, you won't see the light of the day.
All right, part of the things that Cardoso made mention of yesterday was having to deal with the issue of money supply and, of course, deficit financing. He said that based on a study, related study anyway, it showed that past in the past 10 to 15 years, at least 50% of inflation has been as a result of money supply and deficit financing. So I'd like to find out if you agree with this and what other factors you think are contributing to Nigeria's spiraling inflation. And of course, if you used to deal with it, what measures do you think would be appropriate?
Well, when you talk about money supply, definitely we had that issue. Gordon Emefiele said it. And sometimes we need to look at this money supply. What we say about money supply also, at a point, the CBN said over 70 to 80% of their money was outside the banking space. And that was led to the revaluation policy of the CBN at that time, even if we later realized that it was a political issue. But then, when you look at money supply into the system, is that a lot of money that supplies into the system do not actually did not actually come from the productive sector of the system. It's coming sometimes from a lot of corrupt tendencies. And so once this money find a ways into the hands of these individuals, they in turn begin to see how they can change this money to dollar and keep it in their homes. They are not bringing it to the banking space. So that indirectly, you are losing a lot of supply, a lot of naira in the system. Now, if you are going to starve Nigeria of naira and reduce the money supply, do you have the technological way being to address some of these money that will not come in physical cash, will always come up in transactions? So for me, that is where the infrastructure will come to. We have to deal with. Outside of that, I don't think there is anything other than a challenge with money supply. Because when you talk about money supply, that means the CBN will just cut off supply and then things will be fine. But again, they have control over the naira. That's a good thing. They have control over the naira. It's not like the dollar that they don't have control over. So you could think about money supply, but again, it should not starve the productive sector of money supply. And the most productive sector in the Nigerian economy, as we have found out during the naira redesign sector, is the informal sectors. And most of these informal sectors are not a sector that are driven with that cash supply. So we need to be careful so that we don't seem to be tackling inflation in this other way, but creating hardship for people the other way, and also getting a lot of business out of business. So we need to be careful when it comes to the side of money supply.
All right, Muktar, let's quickly look at the issue of the foreign reserves now. We see that it has been encumbered and heavily depleted. So are there any surest possible guides or ways by which this new tenor of the Central Bank of Nigeria can improve and shore up the value of the foreign reserve? I think it's about $33 billion right now. And so when we look at that compared to what it was before, of course, it's in a terrible, deplorable state. Are there ways by which we can improve that in the shortest possible time?
Well, the first way that we need to do to improve that is to make sure we do a lot of for FX trading. And then that that's dealing with our crude oil, and that we've not been able to meet OPEC quota. So that has to do with the government, not directly with the CBN. The CBN itself, like I keep saying, it's a monetary policy committee too. It's a monetary policy tool that is used. So they are monetary policy. So what they need to do is to create that stability. Once they create that stability, we begin to attract investors. First of all, we attract the portfolio investors, which are the hot money, before we begin to attract the direct foreign investors. Once you begin to attract the direct foreign investor, you have created stability in that market. They are coming at a fixed rate. Then you begin to get remittance directly from Nigeria in the diaspora, which will definitely come directly also to the banking space, and those people will talk because there is no need to go into the third or fourth party. Then again, they need to create that liquidity. And how they're going to create that liquidity is what I think is going to be a big challenge for them. But we look at Nigerians, there are four means whereby we earn effects into Nigerian economy: foreign direct investors, portfolio investors, remittance from Nigeria in the diaspora, and also crude oil sale. So is it in a place of CBN to improve some of these things? I think no, but what simply have control of is to create stability. Once they create stability, the foreign investors will come, the direct investors will come, the portfolio investors will also come. Then Nigerian remitters from Nigeria in the diaspora, they will now begin to remit like they used to do before. Remember that the point the CBN gave us a record, Nigerian in the diaspora remitted so much money to Nigerian economy than the total number of the total amount of money we sold in terms of our crude oil. For the area of crude, the CBN has no control over that. The government has to create security. The government has to deal with oil theft. Once they deal with oil theft, once production improves, then this money will find their ways into the CBN vaults.
All right. Now, Cardoso also emphasized on achieving $1 trillion in GDP growth within 8 years. And economist Abin has asking the question, how realistic is this? Or would you consider it as an overly ambitious goal? Because, of course, we want to consider the feasibility of this target, looking at the time frame and what specific economic reforms and strategies would be crucial in achieving it.
There's a saying that says talk is cheap. Anybody can talk. So let's see what he can do. He has an ambition. Nobody should doubt him. Maybe he knows what we don't know. So we have to watch and pray for him to be able. But when you're looking at the economy that we are looking now, with the type of things we're seeing now, I don't think that is what I keep saying, like Adam Oshomole made them to understand during the clearance, that the CBN is not the marketing arm of the Nigerian economy. The CBN is the custodian of the Nigerian monetary policies to attract investors into Nigeria. So when you begin to see CBN, this is the challenge we have had. When we begin to see CBN begin to talk what the physical side should be doing, then you begin to ask yourself, do we have what we call in economic terms division of labor? Are we seeing, in political terms, they say separation of government? So we need to begin to look at that. My fear for this CBN is let it not become a tool for the executive to achieve their goal without even doing the right thing, because sometimes when you build all these things on false foundation, they don't seem to crack until you have an external forces that is beyond our control. And that was what happened. Why we are where we are today is because of the COVID pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and then we're back. So we need to begin to do the right thing, come up with the right monetary policies. Look, like I always say, Paul Alaje always said, he said, you can, maybe if you sin, you go to God, your sins are forgiven. Reverend Father prays for you, Imam prays for you, you go to church, you confess your sin, they will forgive you of your sin. Economic sins are not forgiven. You must pay the price for the sins that you've committed economy, because economic is driven by demand and supply. No matter how much you pray, if you have committed an economic sin, the result, the data will tell you that you have failed in this area, and that is why you're having the result that you are having. So we must be careful that we are not committing more economic sin in the name of looking good on the outside, while inside we are having a lot of challenge. That's my challenge with this current CBN government. Because even if you're saying, well, the first time we have a CBN government that came from the political class, not from the debris from the financial sector, was Chukwuma Soludo, when he was then appointed as special advisor or director for planning with the then President Obasanjo before he brought him to become the CBN governor. That was the first non-financial person or political person. And Yemi Cardoso is one of them, because he was formerly a commissioner. We mustn't forget that he has worked with the political class. That means he knows their language, he knows how to work with them, but then you are now in the CBN that must maintain independency in terms of its monetary policy, not being tortured, not being moved by political move. And remember, that was the whole reason behind the enacting of the CBN Act, so that the ECBN will not be controlled by the executive.
Well, Cardoso, while being screened by the legislators, said and he assured that his administration will not be hijacked by politicians. And I want to believe that he extended that to the executives also. So let's just hold him by his word there, Muktar. Now, this is what you're going to do for me. Just stay with me for a while. We'll go for a short break because there are still so many angles to this that we'll need to consider. I'm looking at the administration of Olayemi Cardoso as the CBN governor, of course, of the Apex Bank of Nigeria. There are so many other areas we need to consider and how it will be able to translate the economy and bring it to the point of buoyancy. Muktar, stay with me. And of course, we'll be back with more. Don't go away. All right, even as we continue to look at what might be and the possible challenges that Olayemi Cardoso, being the new central bank governor of Nigeria, would be, Muktar Mohammed has been talking to us as regards this. And Muktar, are you still there?
I'm here, Lekan.
Okay, beautiful. So let's quickly look at the I&E window. And there have been calls for an autonomous window in the banking system where the currency can trade freely without any issue. So would you also advocate for this, owing to the fact that there have been diversions in remittances, and we've also seen banks who go round the back to patronize below the change, which also affects the value of the forex?
It's all about structural challenges that the economy is facing. So it's not just about this I&E window has been one of the best thing that happened to Nigeria in terms of FX market up till the pandemic came up. You remember that before now, they were going back to the administration of President Mohammed Buhari, the exchange rate was going to about 500 to 600, and the I&E window came, and we saw that steady to about 360 before we had the COVID pandemic that actually caused the structure of that policy. And since then, we've not been able to recover. So whatever everybody is saying, they know what the challenges are. The challenges have nothing to do with the I&E window. All the challenges have everything to do with supply. Begin to end supply, begin to get supply, and more effect into your economy. The naira will stabilize to the dollar. So all the talk about you do this, you do that, you structural, it's all just wash with a lot of talks. Honest, what we need is how can we improve our earnings through the non-oil sector, and then help those people to create incentive for those people to be able to even bring back those earnings into the economy. And that's why I agree with you, because if you don't create that window, and you cannot create that window through the CBN, you create that window through the financial institution, because they are the one that will relate with these people directly. So the area where the CBN is the alpha and the omega when it comes to dealing with FX should be stopped. Let's decentralize it. You're talking about the banks. When you go into the banking hall, you need FX. They'll call you a malam to come and give you FX. So create a system whereby the bank can have a bureau de change arm, like what they have in current account, what they have, you go to your savings account. Can't we have something that they have a bureau de change like it's done globally? You enter the bank, you give them your naira, you get your dollar. With that, you will be able to guide against illicit funds that are used for drug trafficking and others. So it's not rocket science. So all they talked about I&E window not working, I&E window working, is not the problem. The problem is, why are we where we are today? Is just a simple thing. We are not able to attract more FX into our economy. So what should we do? See how we can attract more FX into our economy. The naira will stabilize. It's just as simple as that.
Well, he also mentioned that the need to ensure transparency and clarity of decisions, and of course carrying the stakeholders along. Do you think that could also play a part also? Because of course we know that investors would consider reports, will consider the body language of the CBN, and of course the government will consider economic policies, and these would be foundational decisions that would guide them in knowing or deciding how they want to invest their funds into the country. So when we talk about transparency, are the guidelines that should come with it in order to attract FDIs. What do you think these guidelines should be?
Transparency should start with the CBN. The CBN should give us the audited report as when you're not giving us 7 years audited report. And that's where transparency comes. So if you ask me one thing, I want Yemi Cardoso to do is that after you stabilize the interest rate, the FX market, let's see how you bring transparency. You can't be a regulator that makes sure that banks submit audited report quarterly, and then you as the regulator, you are not able to submit your own report. You have to do a 7 years audited report and submit. No, I think for me that's where transparency starts from. Then transparency also, let me tell you something. Market forces will always look for avenue to take advantage of the market. So to create that transparency, CBN need to up their game in terms of monitoring. They are the regulators, monitoring and regulating. They must be able to create a system to know what each banks are doing. Sometimes what has got us to where we are today with the introduction of bureau de change was because of round tipping that was happening within the financial sector at that time. But now we have technology. Technology can drive this and reduce it to the BRS minimum. So what I expect Yemi Cardoso to be telling us is, I'm going to bring in, in this area of transparency, I'm going to bring in technology. Because at a point, every week, CBN released $200 million to bureau de change operators. How was this being done? Why were we not able to monitor it at the point this bureau de change? We're selling this, start buying from CBN at 3 something. We're selling as high as 500, 550, 600, and nobody was able to monitor them. So That is, for me, is the major challenge. And you must create a market. Either you make the Bureau de Change as partner in progress, or you create a market that will compete with them, and that the market that will be slimless, so that the SMEs are able to go to this space and get their own FX without going through those process of Form E that will last 6 to 3 months. Those are the things that I think the CBN should be doing. Create the structure, let it be slimless, let it be quick, because businesses move at the speed of light. So no businessman have a contract, he has a deadline to meet, and here you are telling him to fill every form, and he will not get it. You say, you want to be in the queue, you are almost number 300, 200 people have not even been reached before. So the man will just go, look for the easiest means, and the Bureau de Change are the most easiest people to meet. So that, for me, is the problem. So let's not drive it. We're trying to create transparency, create a system. Don't be the man. Because what we see in Nigeria, the strong man comes, he becomes the strong man. When he's gone, we are back to where we used to be. So create a system that will outlive you. If you are going to say you want to be the CBN governor for 8 years, you mustn't forget that you don't have that power to make yourself the CBN governor for 8 years. Because if a new government comes and it seems that you are not driving the same policy with them, what has happened to Emefiele, he was already confirmed to do a 2-term, but here we are today, we are talking about him in the past. So it could happen to him. So what is your short-term drive in the next 4 years before you begin to tell us in the next 8 years? And if you want to move us to 8 years, then you need to bring a common vision that will outlive you, that we will not see yourself trying to take the glory, but the larger economy being driven by your policies.
All right, those are big words coming from you, Muktar Mohammed, but then we thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.